years ago when these things first came out, it was, people thought that was the internet, that it wasn't a browser, it was the internet.
Yeah.
And people would say stuff like I can't download the internet or whatever. And it's like, nobody can download the internet.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 479 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name's David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT. Joining me is Donna Grindle from Carden. What's up, Donna?
I think I am. I mean, we're doing a morning one, we're having to get everything organized because our fall is really busy, David.
Yes.
You and me. So
yeah, indeed. And I've got lots going on. You got lots going on. I'll be at a conference next week. I think you're going to yet another trip somewhere.
I didn't travel for so long, and now it's like, look, I can go just, get away.
Mm-hmm.
Calgon, take me away. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
As soon as I get back, I got to start working on some presentations. I did one of those things where, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I call it the yes, damn effect, where somebody asks me to do something and I say yes. And then later on, I'm like, damn.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I have committed myself to several presentations and public speaking events back to back to back within a very short period of time.
Yeah, that's why I have Elizabeth, who always goes, now you realize you're about to do this.
Yeah, I didn't have an Elizabeth, and that's the problem. So one of them I'm done with. I did a webinar earlier this week. That's gone. One of my other ones, I got them to book me for next year's event instead of this year's event. So I pushed that one out. But I have two more coming up in October, I think they're 2 weeks apart. So it's not too bad, but one of them, I enjoy doing it. The thing I don't enjoy about it is I have to change the presentation every single time I do it, because it is a social engineering exhibition that I do on somebody in the audience. But it'll be fun. The local chamber's putting it on, and I went out and I bought like little masks for everybody in the audience to wear, because they're going to be hackers, and I couldn't
pretend you're the hacker.
Yeah, right? I couldn't afford hoodies for everybody, so you're just going to get a mask. So yeah, it's always fun. It's interactive, and everybody gets to become hackers that day. And some people enjoy it a little too much.
I could see that.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so for today though, we're going to be talking about something I don't know that we've talked much about, which is browsers and breaches. Not browsing and breaches, but browsers and breaches, because
browsers and trousers is what you said, right?
Yeah, browsers and trousers. Yeah, don't be browsing in my trousing. But there's problems with browser extensions specifically, that are vulnerabilities that people don't realize that are out there, and it's something that a lot of IT companies are not yet paying a lot of attention to, or it's harder for them to deal with. So we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, I don't think people realize it. They don't see the browser as a program itself.
Right.
So yeah, we're going to get into how you should think about the browser, how we do think about it, and how we probably should think about it differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Perfect example of how you can't continue down the same path all the time in IT and cybersecurity, because we probably wouldn't even have this conversation a few years ago. There was no need to have this conversation a few years ago, but today we will.
Big time.
Yep. So anyway, I want to say a big shout out to those of you who listen and support us. Those of you who may not know, you can go to helpmewithhipaa.com to find out more about Donna and myself, as well as Carden Club, HIPAA for MSPs, Security First IT, all those things that we also do besides publishing this award-winning podcast. Here we go. All right, let's dive into the HIPAA briefs.
Yeah. Yeah, you sent me this article from NPR. Cyber attacks plague healthcare. Critics call the federal response inadequate. Well, I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm also saying there's other things that are in there that people don't recognize or know about. But this particular article, they actually interviewed administrator at Central Oregon Pathology Consultants. And these folks, it said, I think 60 years they had been around.
Wow.
Yeah. And they got caught up in the Change Healthcare thing. And, you know, we did our episodes. Change is going to cause some change.
Yeah. I got my breach notification letter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I told you yesterday, I'll share it with everybody else. I got my breach notification letter. What I didn't tell you is they actually sent me two letters in the same envelope, one in English and one in Spanish.
Just in case.
And then there was another page. I honestly didn't look at it very closely, but there was a whole bunch of other different languages on there. So I think it was probably links to other different ones. But I told you yesterday that I might frame this one because I think it might be that important.
Of all the ones we've ever gotten. Yeah. Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, because I think we're going to look back and go, you know, it's kind of the pre-health Change Healthcare event and post-Change Healthcare event. I do think it might be that well, thing.
I still see that the ransomware attack, I want to say 2016, on Presbyterian Hospital in California, I think Los Angeles, Southern California, where we really saw, I mean, ransomware attacks were happening, but that was the one I remember the most of where we saw, look at the impact this is causing. And I think it's where the criminals saw it as well.
Yep.
And that was a turning point in ransomware attacks in healthcare, at least in my mind, which no one wants to really go there. But absolutely agree that this event has the impacts of this will be seen for decades in healthcare. And you know, well, I mean, it's good, it's big. And this particular Central Oregon Pathology Consultants, these are some stats from based on, you know, just the information they were sharing. They had, as of July, so this article is from September 2024, they were, as of July, had 20,000 outstanding claims stuck in some level of processing.
Oh my goodness.
So you remember how we talked about then, it's like just because they get back up and running does not mean that the problems are solved. That still, that backlog, and I would wager that is not gone.
Yeah.
I would hope that it's substantially less, but I would wager that it is not completely gone.
Talk about cash flow issues, though.
I know, and they were like living off of all the money, you know, and that's just why some of the practices ended up closing. They used up all the, it was small, and there was just no money to pay the bills. And then some practices were like, okay, nobody's getting paid, but we're all here. We're going to stick with it. And the substantial amount of impacts that many just private practices have experienced. I mean, everybody's talking about the hospitals. And that's one of the things this article points out, is that everybody's worried about the hospitals. And there is a huge focus on the hospitals. But you don't want the hospitals to become the only place you can get care.
Right.
And they were asking in this article, they said, you know, they went for months without getting paid. And they still don't know how to estimate the full financial impact. Because, you know, they're finally going to get paid on this, but who's paying the interest on the debt they had to pull in? You know, because you know there's some debt somewhere in there to cover that. And whatever cash had to be gone. And
this is the interesting part of it, because we have like downtime cost calculators, right? You've seen those before.
Yeah.
But I think that as accurate as those try to be, I believe this is an example of how you can't figure out the full financial impact because of just so many different factors. But certainly those calculators get you in a ballpark. It's usually a lot more than what people anticipate it being.
Yeah. And some people will always say, oh, I think it's always less than that. And I'm like, there's too many variables.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the variables that matter. Because if I'm down 5 hours versus 5 days versus 5 weeks versus 5 months, there's a bit of a, there's a snowball effect.
Yeah. Well, like in this case, was COPC down for an amount of time? Because they might be back up and running and functioning, but now all their processing and claims are stuck. So even though they're back up and running, the processing of claims is not.
Yeah.
And
the recovery isn't part of the downtime calculator.
Right. So it's well, I shouldn't say it's always more than anticipated, but it often is.
Well, and that was another piece on here. So not only are the claims a problem, but according to this article, and I'm going to assume as of July, because that's what they said the claims were. They didn't say the same on this, but their patient payment portal was still down in July. Hopefully not still now. But so not only are they unable to get the claims paid, but let's just exacerbate the entire cash flow issue and keep the patients from paying us.
Yeah. I wonder if this is going to do like in the IT industry, where we've had this separation of things. Like everybody went to this consolidation years ago, where your RMM and your antivirus and your this and your backup and all this was all in one platform. And then when that one platform has a hiccup, you start having all these issues. And so people started segmenting everything out. Now I am seeing some people like ConnectWise, they're starting to try to integrate all this stuff back in again. I had a discussion yesterday with a vendor, and I'm like, no, I'm not really interested in that. I'm not interested in putting all my eggs in one basket anymore.
No. And anybody that understands this scenario, and I'm like you. Years ago, I had most everything in one platform, and then I split them all out. And now I worry, well, okay, if that platform goes down, I'm going to have this problem. If that one goes down, but if one of them goes down, the others are still working.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the big thing, the big discussion. And, we're having our big all hands meeting, the Health Sector Coordinating Council, having the big all hands meeting in November that I think I'm going to. Out in San Diego, and a big discussion is going to be this. I mean, it's all we talk about in different variables of its impact. So the thing that I found interesting is in this article, they discuss the fact that the federal response is insufficient because they have a strategy, but it's so focused on hospitals that it's not looking at the contractors and the suppliers and the support, because when we look at everything we do, HIPAA and all of that, everybody starts with it applies to medical practices. But we know the supply chain is becoming the key attack vector. And ransomware attacks, in this, I didn't realize this number. They said that in 2023, we had 249 healthcare specific ransomware attacks, which is the most in any industry. And you and I both always believe that we don't know about all of them.
No, it's way more than that.
So, and it's still more than most people have. So, yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, now, of course, you have to define like what ransomware attack. You're talking about successfully ransomware attack? Because, I mean, even in my small company, we've had ransomware attacks. They're just, fortunately, knock on wood, haven't been successful, but it was still an attack.
Right.
So, and I know of people that have successful ransomware attacks and they don't get reported and all that stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a lot more. So
at any rate, the article, it's bringing it back into the forefront, and I think, it has to stay there. We have to keep bringing it back up, because if we let that, we're going to have the next one, and everybody's going to be, why didn't we do X after the Change Healthcare one? So I believe we're about to see a lot of things being done, but we also know it takes time to do all of these things, and a lot of it has to do with legal stuff, and legal stuff is brutally slow.
Yes, it is. Oh man. So yeah, speaking of brutally slow, I'm still hoping that the security rule update is going to come out this year. I'm starting to wonder.
They had targeted originally, like at the beginning of the year, they targeted releasing their proposed changes in September, which we know, it's very rare. Even you and I will target, well, we're going to get something done by September, and that doesn't necessarily happen, and it's just me and you. So, you know how that goes. So I think we'll see it maybe in October, but if we don't see it in October, we won't see it this year. I don't think. Not. So anyway, let's talk browsers and trousers.
Yeah, browsers and breeches. Yeah. So it always reminds me of your bourbon and breeches.
I know. My bourbon and breeches happy hour.
Yeah. So browsers, most people know, but if you don't, it's your window to the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's funny that, years ago when these things first came out, it was, people thought that was the internet, that it wasn't a browser, it was the internet.
Yeah.
And people would say stuff like I can't download the internet or whatever. And it's like, nobody can download the internet.
I always love the one, there's like a nerd video where it's like a recording of a support call. You deleted the internet. What? I didn't. No, I didn't. and finally, it's like, well, the E is gone. The what? And it was the old Internet Explorer days. And, first of all, didn't use Internet Explorer that much once we had alternatives. And, we had used Netscape Navigator.
That's right.
And so the E was Internet Explorer, which you should not be using anymore. Yeah, those, fingers crossed. Netscape Navigator, I think part of it became what is now Mozilla Firefox. And then that, is there. So we have all of these tools, and it's actually software. It's not the internet.
Yeah. And if you think about it, a lot of companies run almost exclusively on their browser now. With cloud applications.
I know we do.
Very important. The browser used to be a lot less important. It was just, you go to browse. You browse the internet with it. And that's not the case anymore. Like I do all my email, cloud-based email, documents. Almost everything is cloud-based. So it's multiple software things happening. And anyway, let's cover the rest of it.
So let's talk about, if you use Microsoft Edge, which is the Microsoft browser that comes with Windows, but it's, used to, it had its own, they had their own version. That's what Internet Explorer was. But they actually use the Chromium, the Chrome core to build Edge. So I remember when, I saw the news articles, Google Chrome is now the most used browser over Internet Explorer. Wow. right? I mean, that was huge. And we felt like we were cutting edge because we were using Chrome way as soon as it came out.
Mm-hmm. I think I've tried almost every browser when they come out.
I screw around with them. I don't know how many I have. Every now and then I go through and delete browsers off my. But the big names, there's Chrome, Edge, Mozilla Firefox, which that one cracks me up because some people call it Mozilla and some people call it Firefox, and they don't know that they're the same.
Yeah,
I've seen people have discussions. Well, no, I use Mozilla. Well, I use Firefox. No, you're using the same thing.
Yeah, Mozilla is the company, like Microsoft, Firefox, because there's also Thunderbird, which I used to use that.
Yeah, the email
which is the email client, not a browser. But yeah, now I use Brave a lot. Now Brave is another fork of using Chrome and all that. But
and then Opera, I actually use Opera for specific things. And it's got some pretty good, it has like a built-in VPN and it's very privacy concerned. And then you have Safari, which is the Apple browser. And it comes built into the Macs and the iPads, but you can get the other browsers on the Macs and the iPads. So it's just like Edge comes with this. Safari, there are certain things that it can do on Apple devices that the other browsers can't just because it's integrated into. But that's always what's going on. So all of those are browsers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and like we mentioned, there's Vivaldi. What others can you think of? There's
oh gosh, there's a good many of them out.
And we're not talking dark web browsers.
I was going to say, not that I would ever use Tor browser, but
I know, right? So you can use all these different ones. I mean, there was one, I don't know if it's still there, called Dolphin. You remember Dolphin was
oh yeah, that's a Linux browser. Yeah. So yeah, and, if I'm on Linux, I might use that one. So yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them. There's let's see, there's Conquer. That's a Linux browser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sea Monkey.
Forgot about that one. So you could see that browsers themselves, that alone, you can't just say, when we say, and you're like, oh, I'm going to this site. Well, what browser are you using? Okay. What do you mean? I've had people ask me that, what do you mean? Or I'll say, open your browser. And they're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about when we say browsers. And yes, everybody uses them. And you'll see these alerts. Make sure you update Chrome. Make sure you update Firefox. Make sure. And they get updates. But do you know how many people? Wait, let me back up. We both know how many people. One of the things that I even have to remind some people that I talk to often, we'll leave that there, that they should not just leave the browsers open on their computers at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where that it remembers where I'm at. I was like, find another way. There are others.
Mm-hmm.
Find another way, because things are happening. So while we were getting ready, what did you see? I mean, you had one tab that did you ever even figure out what it was doing?
No, I mean, I just closed it, but yeah, every tab you have open uses resources, and for some reason, some tabs use more than other. But I mean, I had a tab open that was literally sitting at a static screen using over a gig of RAM
out of nowhere.
Yeah, fortunately, I got slots of RAM, but if I didn't. If you got 8 gigs or sometimes even just 16, you got a bunch of tabs open, you're completely choking that machine down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you go and somebody's, I got problems with my computer. And and it's like the little tab buttons are like slivers.
Yeah.
And there's 4 windows of them. And there would be your problem right there. That is your problem. Almost certainly. And it's the same way on your mobile devices.
Mm-hmm.
And the browsers on your mobile devices while you're using Safari or Chrome or whatever on your mobile devices. They're the same but different than the versions that you use on your desktop devices. So keep that in mind. But they have all these really cool features. And there's cool features like, well, we're going to hit two specific discussions in the scary part here. There's the Chrome kiosk mode, and we'll talk about what that's for. And then the extensions across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So first, let's talk about the kiosk mode. Now, I think we just discussed in the last episode about a phishing attack where it was rerouting you based on the HTTP headers. The browser would interpret them and go to a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And the browser is a key element of that attack that steals credentials. And credential theft is like the big thing they're after. They're using phishing and social engineering to get credentials. That's the big focus, because once they get the credentials, the next thing they do is immediately go try to attack or get control of that account. So I don't know if you've ever used the kiosk mode. We've used it in a few places, in a few cases, but basically we've all been to a kiosk where you walk up and it's a screen and all you can only do the things that screen allows you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. Like think of like you go somewhere and they hand you a tablet to fill out a registration form or patient intake form. You can't do anything else on that. You can only fill the form out. That would be like a kiosk mode.
That's what it's on.
Or you go to a ATM machine, like you can't type anything in. You can only do what the ATM machine presents you with in the menus.
Yeah. So, but unlike the ATM machine, which, literally only shows you that, you can take Chrome, which normally lets you do all the cool, nifty browser stuff, and switch it into kiosk mode and display a web page on a device and let that device function as a kiosk. Nifty tool.
Mm-hmm.
Until
somebody exploits it.
Yeah. And I mean, this gets back to the hackers aren't using failures in the software. Yes, they use the vulnerabilities, but there are so many cases today where they use the tools that already exist that are built in that we all use to trick people.
Mm-hmm.
Because
they call that living off the land.
Yes. So what they do is you go to a website or they get you to open something, but it's deploying some malware called StealC, because everything's got a name. StealC, the letter C. But what it does is it changes, like you're just moving along, boom, 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 and all of a sudden you're in kiosk mode. And most people wouldn't know what to do. And you can't minimize it. You can't close it unless you know what to do. It locks you into full screen kiosk mode. Nifty. Great if that's where you want to be. Typically, you can hit escape or F11, but they disable those. So, it's crazy. You would have to, it would be tricky to get out of this once you're in it. But what it does is there's no way for the user to close it, no way for the user to get away from the screen, but it's got a Google login prompt.
Oh, well, then you have to click that.
You got to log in. The only thing I can do is log in.
Uh-huh.
And so, the user can't, you have no other options. You get frustrated. You can't get out of the screen and you just give in and log into Google. What that's doing is now I'm harvesting those credentials you just gave me. Mm-hmm. And poof, it immediately goes over to the attackers who get an alert and say, hey, try this. And they feed that into their programs. It's not like there's, three guys named Ned and two named Dave. But it's stealing the information. And the only real thing that it does, the malware does, is launch you into kiosk mode. So it's not doing malicious behavior.
Right. Yeah. And it's using, actually, it's a marketing technique where you only present somebody with the action you want them to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty.
We call it a call to action.
A pretty intense CTA right there. But the only things that you can do, like if you stumble on this, you can try. There's Alt F4 and Control Shift Escape will usually get you out. Otherwise, you got to force a shutdown, reboot into safe mode because it's going to try to open that back up again. Mm-hmm. But if you get stuck there, do not enter the credentials because I know it seems normal and I know it's frustrating, but that's what they're counting on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one of the ways. So we talked last week about how they trick the browsers into taking you to one of these places. Well, now they're also like, not only are we going to take you to one of these places, we're going to lock you into that page.
Right. It's an escape room.
Yeah, it is. And there's no key to be found. But for the most part, these things are so hard for our technology to figure out. I mean, what does your technology look for? I mean, what would your security software be able to look for there, David?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's doing everything that is normal behavior. It's just being used in a malicious way.
Mm-hmm. So you can block kiosk mode, but I don't even know if you can do that. Mm. But at any rate, you can see just how dangerous that the browsers can be, even though you it's not doing actual malicious behavior.
Yeah.
So that's just the browser itself. But then we get to the next step. And these are wonderful little things right up to the point they're not wonderful anymore.
Yeah. I mean, browser extensions, I don't know about you, but they're almost like WordPress plugins. You see some people just have, they'll have 30, 40 different browser extensions. Mm-hmm. And because they extend the functionality of your browser. Right. And integrate things into it, like even with our password managers, automatically fills in the passwords and stuff like that. So they're extremely useful, but
yeah, I have very specific ones and I know what they do and I know why I have them. And every now and then there'll be one where I want to use it, but I'm not happy enough with it. So I use it and then I turn it off, get rid of it.
The ones that drive me the craziest are those. You're in an enterprise environment, and you see people with these shopping extensions.
Oh Lord, Lord,
drives me nuts.
It's I agree that those do not belong. They should have a function like the password manager. I have one that helps me record video. But it's, Vimeo. I have one that helps me review cookies and, it's very specific ones. It's just like going out when we say on your apps on your mobile device, it's the same scenario. You just go out there and start grabbing these things. There's a lot of times where I'll look at one and I'll be like, that looks right. Nah, too many red flags. About, who develops it? Do you look at that? How old is it? Does it, what else does it do? And that's where we got into this new Georgia Tech announced a study they had done. Mm-hmm. And it's quite disturbing. They've developed a tool that reviews, and I haven't spent the time to learn how the tool works, just what the tool does. And what the tool does is, and you can get it on GitHub and play with it, but you feed these extensions into it and it evaluates what the extensions are doing behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. what is really going on? You know, you hear, oh, you need to clear your cache. You need to clear your browsing history. You need to clear your cookies. Well, guess what? You can clear those, and how many seconds later is it going, poof, they're right back.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So they did an evaluation, and they found, this is the scary part, over 3,000 extensions that are automatically collecting user-specific data, and 200 were directly extracting email addresses, banking details. That one bothered me a lot. And social media profiles.
Wow.
Automatically extracting them, taking them.
Wow.
Not just collecting, but taking them. And
now, do they have a list of them that we can go look at?
And there may be one. I mean, it's a university research study and paper, so there's a ton of data available. And I would think that in the end, there's so many. There's a lot of reference material.
Yeah, because
in the paper,
I imagine a lot of these they're not malicious extensions. They're just companies that are collecting data that you don't know about. And you probably click, yes, you can do it, because you click next, install.
Well, and they say that a lot of them don't even say, they don't disclose that they're doing it. It's not in the description. It's not in their privacy policy. It's not saying it at all. And, so they're essentially, the point that the paper makes is, hey, this is really bad, and there needs to be stronger privacy controls and accountability within the industry. So understanding that these things open additional little doors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, as we said, the browser is a piece of software.
Right.
And you can use the software to trick people without putting any bad code in it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you add the extensions, which may or may not be adding additional ways to trick people, or be malicious in its own way, meaning stealing data, or actual malicious attacks going through it. And we hear those. We see those.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that some extensions can put information on a web page.
Yes.
And so you could go, like, for example, I have an extension that if you go to LinkedIn, it will create a sidebar on that page, and it looks just like it belongs in LinkedIn, but it's not. It's feeding that sidebar in when LinkedIn loads.
Yeah. Which is, they're great. They're very helpful. But you better evaluate them and, make sure that they're updated. And you only want to use, don't go out there and just, this will work. The number of times that I found, use this extension, and I go look at it and I'm not going to do it because of it's not up to date, or I go to the website of whoever's maintaining it and I'm like, that seems hinky, those kind of things. But there are, which ones are, well, we went through a ton of browsers, but there are some features in some of them, like sandboxing and those kind of things, where it won't let it do other things. It runs to see what's happening. And, there's 2FAs. That's another reason we want the 2FAs. If it is grabbing your credentials, but unfortunately, it could also grab some 2FA tokens, and it can do, these things can do nasty things. So it's software running on top of software. It's just like another application on your desktop, your Windows desktop, Mac, whatever. It's like another program, but it's running within the browser instead of on your desktop, and that's why you need to look at it.
And just think about all those people who use SMS through a browser.
Yeah.
Which I do that. I'm hands raised. I do that.
I know. I just was like, it's a layer I just cannot. But anyway. So this is why we're going to see more and more discussions about a term, enterprise browsers.
Yeah.
And they're not, I mean, you could make Chrome be an enterprise browser. There are ways, but it's, you get like Edge for Business. And so, but what it does is it lets the company control what can happen in the browser.
Yeah. Yeah. It has things like you got enhanced security built in. So there's different protections that, your free version, doesn't have. So that protects you there. They can enforce more things. So think about, if you're familiar with like group policy, you can kind of do the same thing on the browser side. From an IT standpoint, you can often you can do the centralized management, which is the hardest part for us in IT. To how are we going to manage all these people that are doing things in a browser that we have no visibility into without manually going and looking at every single one of them, which that ain't gonna happen.
Well, that is a very, very important point that people need to understand, though. Oh, well, IT takes care of security. You can't see what's happening inside that browser.
I mean, if there's some way to do it, I'm not aware of it. And there may be tools out there, but again, you start getting into, okay, now you got to pay for another thing to add on to your other stuff. And so it's going to be more cost. There's more overhead for managing it from the MSP and all that. But it is a problem.
Well, and just think about the amount of data it would need to collect to be able to parse through to look for things that would look malicious, even though they're not looking malicious.
Yep. And then now we're also bringing up something that creates more logs.
Yeah.
And more logs to collect, more logs to review, more logs to report on. And we already know people are not doing a great job of doing that anyway.
Right. So don't think that you're loading stuff within your browser and IT's securing it. That's wrong.
Wrong.
But I think we're going to see a lot more of these lockdown browsers happening for business. But the downside of that is there any way to prevent those URLs from being opened in a non-enterprise browser?
It's funny that you use the term lockdown browser because there is actually a browser called Lockdown Browser.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's used in the education world to make sure that you're not going to places like, I don't know, OpenAI while you're doing schoolwork. I'm not 100% familiar with it, but I've seen it popping up a lot in the education realm. So anyway, well, I agree with you. I think the browser companies, Google, Microsoft, all those, I'm hoping that they start doing better jobs, not just in an enterprise environment, but even, on the non-enterprise to help mitigate this issue.
Well, to create some sort of built-in security that the browser itself is performing. And they've continued to add security. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's completely unsecured. Everything can do what it wants. But at the same time, the times when you go to a website and it's like it won't let you do something, and it's like, this website isn't working. And then you finally figure out, oh, you're at a malicious website and it's shutting down things. But then I've had it shut down things that it shouldn't shut down. Right. But, that's why we end up in that loop. And
yeah, and I mean, that's a great point, and certainly a great point I would bring up to your staff is if you're ever doing anything on the computer and all of a sudden it's just not working, like the thing you're trying to do, it may be because some piece of security is trying to stop you from doing that. So instead of trying to brute force yourself, maybe start asking questions, put a support ticket in, call IT, whatever the case might be, and just double check what's going on here. Because I've had times where, we've blocked clients from installing software, and it's funny because you'll see them constantly requesting to install the software over and over and over again. And I'm like, all right, somebody got to get on the phone with this person because we're blocking it and they're getting a message pop up on their screen. IT's blocked this and they still keep trying it.
They're like, we want you to give in, give in. It's like the kid that just keeps asking mom and dad, because if I keep asking, I'll get what I want.
Yeah. What is it? Frustration. What was it? Frustration-based attacks. That's what they are.
Yeah.
Your users are creating a frustration-based attack.
Which is what the kiosk one. We've looped back around, right?
That's it.
Yeah. But it is, I mean, we need to understand, and we had a conversation about this, the importance of actually understanding what you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires people to actually, there's this, I just want it to work attitude. Okay. I just want it to work. I want the car to drive, but I got to know how to drive it. And to know how to drive it, I have to understand some parts of the mechanisms of how it works. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to be able to continue to drive the car, I'm going to have to maintain it and understand why I'm maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just, it works. So there you have it. But all the stuff safely. We just talked about, none of it even relates to, except for cookies, maybe the discussion we put in, all of the stuff that we also have to talk about in healthcare with the web tracking. None of this has to do with the web tracking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does, but it doesn't. They're the same, but different.
Yeah. As usual, we're giving you something else to worry about. Anyway, all right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media site. Share this with somebody, especially if you're in IT. You should definitely be sharing this with your clients so they understand the challenges you have. All right, folks, that is it for us. Be sure to join us again next week. And remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
Help me with HIPAA. Let's get it right. Protect your patients day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with HIPAA. Let's get it right.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.